The other thing that we talk about is one of my biggest fears, and it's kind of funny because as I've gone from a youthful person, a youthful Melody, to a mature Melody, a maturer Melody, um, I have worried a lot about my passion because I've had a lot of it. It's brimmed over. And when I was younger, a lot of angst and energy was put into my writing, sort of and I felt if that went away, what would happen to my art? Would I lose my art? And
Mhm.
ultimately, I came to a spot where I recognized that that wasn't going to happen. I think overall, you'll hear that that really doesn't happen for most people either. But I do think that it's an artistic fear.
Oh, absolutely.
Um, but what we are talking about here is maintaining passion, but yet having the conversations that are, like you said, underlying, that are authentic, but not losing whatever that fire is that keeps your little light burning brightly.
We have a story that goes something like this. A lot of artists have had a lot of angst in their lives, a lot of abuse, a lot of all kinds of negative stuff. And that has been the source of some really amazing art, hasn't it?
Mhm.
What I think is really interesting is we have a tendency to tack our passion to those incidents. And while they're the basis of the creativity that we have, the passion is below the line. And I think that really what happens is that when somebody is in an artistic mode, they're taking those negative things in the cases where the source is a negative thing, and they're letting go of it and coming below the line and finding this wellspring of a way to express how they feel, what they've learned, that sort of thing from that negative incident that happened above the line. And and so it's one of the things that's come up or will come up in some of the videos that we've already done, where you've talked a few times about this idea of, I don't want, if I let go of the story, I'm paraphrasing, if I let go of that icky story, I'm going to lose my passion. And I think that what really happens is if you let go of that story, that I'm going to lose my passion, and you take that story that was something negative and you're able to bring it below the line where you have a balanced story about it without discounting it, without whitewashing it, without putting lipstick on the pig. What happens is, I think, it's a guess off the top of my head, but I think all of a sudden you have access to far more passion and creativity around that thing because I'm not stuck in just the negative problem side of it. But now what I can see is that it's been a problem and that there's value in it. One of the things we've talked about in an authentic story is how to tell a balanced story about a negative situation, right? So I think that, and someday we'll get down to where that wellspring comes from and how that fits in the model. But I really think that what happens for artists specifically is they tap into something negative and it becomes the catalyst for their art, which is fine, but they get nervous about letting go of the ickiness of it. And what I think is that when you honor the ickiness, but also find it redefined from a balanced perspective, that wellspring is there and able to flow even more.
I think what happened to me, and it took me a long time to realize it, was I believe that I had a bit of a negative connotation that if I neutralized
Yes.
that that pain, let's be honest,
Hmm.
embarrassment, fear, all the stuff, if people find me out, if they know what, terrible things happen, there's this wrap of shame. But yet at the same time, I could pull on that, deep, anxiety and, in some cases trauma, like you've talked about, to grow these beautiful flowers. What I found was that my fear was that when I neutralized the pain, that I would then become a bit of the Stepford wife zombie that
Yeah.
we sort of talked about,
Yeah.
and because I took that word neutralizing it and I made it into, it will neutralize the passion. But what it did was it broke the container that was keeping me from growing. It The container that was the little hard container that was around that pain cracked open. The pain became less, and my ability to grow became more. Now, have I used that ability to the best of my potential? Maybe not like I'd like, but do I recognize that I have it there and I don't feel as held back? So
I,
that's
just a couple of things in regard to that. What if I were translating what you just said? You had something that was angsty, that was the basis of what you're able to do creatively. And there's a story that says, if I figure that out, if I balance, if I'm able to do that, then I'm going to lose my creativity that was based on that. So what you do is you switch your negative story above the line for a somewhat positive story above the line. I'm going to let that go, but I'm going to lose my creativity. And so one of the things that hit me, and I think we've talked about this, or we'll talk about it in a future video, is remember the cartoons where the character all of a sudden has an angel and a demon on their shoulders? And the angel's like, if we lose that, we're never going to be able to be creative again. And the other angel's like, oh, but if we just do this, everything will be fine. And what's fascinating to me, just loved when I realized this, both of those stories are absolutely above the line, do not serve us. And so often what happens is we think that we're trading a negative story for a positive story, when all we're doing is trading a story that doesn't serve us, it's negative, for a story that doesn't serve us, it's positive, and neither one feels authentic, right? And
mhm.
so what you said is, and what I realized was, when I did kind of crack that container open, that had less pain. And my translation is, I also had a greater sense of agency. I came below the line, and son of a gun, when I was below the line, there was that passion. I was able to grow, and I didn't lose the catalyst for that creativity. Fair statement?
Yeah, yes, yes. I had tied the pain to my writing. I'd
Yep.
sewed it together, and I
And
was like,
rightfully so,
yeah,
right? I mean, there there was nothing wrong with that initially. It truly was. It became one of your outlets for dealing with your pain, was your writing, right?
yeah. Bad poems. Bad poetry.
But does that resonate with you now? Because I know that when we started talking and going through this model, and those issues came up about, I don't want to lose my passion. I Does it make sense for you now that your passion isn't tied to the negative stuff? The negative stuff is the catalyst for expressing that passion.
Yeah, yes, in multiple ways. I mean, one, my mind thought has changed, about to use, because I love Southernisms. this little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to do that when the well, to use your word, wellspring, when the energy from that light uh, is based on trauma or shame or fear. And so removing that off of it gives it its own authority. And then also it exposes other areas that press down on that passion and diminish that, which could be things as simple as not getting enough sleep, not the nutrition's not where it needs to be, yada, 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 yada. Yeah.
Well, and the thing is that when you're tying your passion to something angsty, you're in a state of dis-ease. You're not at ease. And then all those other things follow. Oh, I'm not eating, I'm not sleeping, that sort of thing. I mean, you think about how much of our dis-ease, our disease, is based on being stuck carrying the baggage and torturing ourselves around stories that haven't changed over time and that aren't authentic to who we are here and now. Man, oh man, I'm convinced that there's, I don't know, is it half, is it a quarter, is it 3/4 of all disease is starts with all this angst that I carry around. And I walk around feeling icky all the time, looking
Mm-hmm.
for solutions above the line that don't serve me. I'll take a pill. I'll drink too much. Not saying not drink. But I'll excess. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, yes. Yeah. I mean, we all know that stress, contributes to, physiological aspects of our body.
Right.
Absolutely. So if
Exactly.
we're not managing our stress, through whatever the tools, that you have available to you, even, going back to the, 70s when they were doing biofeedback, or the 80s or whenever then that was,
Yeah.
transcendental
Yeah.
meditation and all of that stuff, all the anything, any tool that you have that you bring forward to help you. But I think, that's what we talk about here, is that this is a
Absolutely.
tool to, to create, to give you an opportunity to, one, identify, because that a lot of times that's the hardest. There's so much in our environments now, we're just bombarded, to identify the areas where we can actually start using this tool, and then applying it judiciously, and then exercising it, and then all of a sudden, that area is actually working a little bit better, and then you move on to, whatever the next item is that you've got to pull out of your, you know
And the thing from my standpoint is that really one of the things that's fascinating about this model and applying it is it helps me to very quickly be able to identify whether the thing that I'm looking at as a potential solution really is a solution. Like, is it a quick fix? We're going to solve it now. You're going to give it 110%. Oh my God, all above the line, right? Or is it something that's going to help me? And like, you think about biofeedback. I haven't done that in ages, but I still think it's a really cool tool. But if I just walk around saying, yeah, I do biofeedback, Melody. Oh, please help me. But if I use biofeedback and what it does is helps me to center myself and ground myself, boy, oh boy, that's below the line in a big way. So it's so much of it is, kind of what the story is we're tying to that thing that we're looking at to help us to be a better version of ourselves.
And I think, we've talked about this before, but I've started to call some of the difficulties I have just when I get ready to go to sleep, transitional anxiety,
Yeah.
transitional anxiety.
Yep.
And I believe it or not, as we've gone through this discussion, and I've been working on identifying some things, that's something physical that happens when in the transition between, my
Mm-hmm.
body changing from the day activities to the night activities. It
Mm-hmm.
seems like there's this passing transition where I feel anxious. It's anxiety. And normally my mind would say, oh my God, I'm anxious. What am I
Hmm.
anxious over? I'd
Right.
find 5 things to be
Right.
anxious over, and I'd start working on them, working them over. Now I say to myself, oh, that's a physical transitional anxiety. It's not attached to any of my work or day issues. Something I just feel, it'll go away in 2 minutes. So I'm just going to give it time to go away. And I'm not mentally attaching, I'm not adding a story to it. Before, I would add a story to it. Oh my God, I'm anxious. Oh shit, I need to get that stuff done. Now I need to get out of bed and make notes about stuff. Now I need to go back to bed. Did I make enough notes? I mean, it was dreadful. And I'm really kind of pleased, but it's funny. It doesn't change the anxiety. I mean, I still have that hit, but I just give it 2 minutes, and then it goes away.
So I think it's fascinating. I still think that there are stories tied to it. I do think that it
Could
is
be.
transitional in the standpoint that, I am shifting, and think about it. Anything that we do
Mm,
has a physical response in our body. If we do something that feels icky, or we tell a story that feels icky. So what I guess I would say in regards to that is, I do think there's still some things that you're thinking about, but what you've realized is that I don't have to deal with them right this moment as I'm
mm,
getting into bed, right?
mhm,
That I'm going to be okay, and that I can tell a story that says, you know, we're just going to let go for the evening.
mhm,
Time to just wrap it up and not feel like I have to attend to everything that I think of in the moment. And when you do that, we've talked about, I don't know if we've talked about it yet, but in upcoming episodes, we've talked about the protector, and that protector wants to take the best care of us. And he's a little manic. She's a little manic. Like, oh, better get up, and because I don't want to forget about, like, all of a sudden, all those negative stories start playing that get my butt out of bed. And I'm like, I would just want to go to sleep.
Half an hour ago, I was so tired I couldn't keep my eyes open. What the hell happened?
But what you've done is you've said, stuff above the line, it's bedtime, it's time, protector. You can just mellow out. We're going to sleep. We're not going to deal with any of that stuff now. I think of David Allen. Have you heard of David Allen, Getting Things Done? He wrote a very, very popular book 10 or 15 years ago. And his whole thing is, get the list on paper and out of your head. What you've done is said, it's okay for me not to have to write that stuff down tonight. It'll be there in the morning, and I'll deal with it a little later and not let it impact my sleep. That's an authentic story, whether you're able to, whether you had articulated it that way or not. An authentic story about coming below the line, giving myself a break, and letting me go to sleep. So does that make sense in regards to the
Yep.
creativity thing, and also what we've talked about in terms of transitional anxiety?
Mhm. Yeah, no, and you and I have, like you said, we've touched on this here and before, because my big concern is that please do not take any of my passion from me. I need it, untarnished and burning brightly, and I need even what little is left to, push me through the last years of my life, cognizantly, energetically, lovingly, present, to use a, you know, to use a
That's
word.
an authentic story, young lady. Right? I mean,
Yeah.
honestly, like, this is what I want, and this is where I want to go, and these are the things that are important to me, and these are the things I'm willing to change in order to have that play out that way. In the, I mean, I just turned 60, and I'm like, wow, last quarter of my life probably, or
Right?
somewhere in that range.
You're right. We're running out of road. As I tell some of my friends, death has saddled his horse in my life.
Hmm.
He might not be on it. He might not be on his way to me, but that
Right.
horse is out of the barn. It's got a saddle on it.
But and that's the kind of thing that you can take in a really above the line story that doesn't serve you and be driven by fear, or it can be the catalyst for saying, you know what, this is really a new level of awareness for me that I want to use as a foundation for moving forward in a way that serves me and that feels good and authentic, and that I'm not in fear all the time, that I've got agency in my life, and I'm excited about where I'm going over these, next 20 or 30 years, whatever the case may be. It's a whole different approach, isn't it?
It is.
One last thing, would you do me a favor and give me a thumbs up on this video? And also, if you want to see more, hit subscribe. If you want to see them right away, click on the bell. And then please, please feel free to give me any feedback that you have. More than anything else, I want to hear what people think, to answer their criticisms. And that's a great way to do it, is by leaving a message. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.